Okay. Yesterday we had been talking about Perek Yud Zayin, Pasuk Zayin. I want to finish a few points today. So yesterday we had said that on page 1026, we said Yada Eidim Tiyabo Barishona on page 1026, 6 lines from the top. And we had mentioned the idea that the witnesses have to do something in order to somehow neutralize the negative effect that's on them. I mean, the halacha is, what the commentaries say, is that by executing the guy, the fact that he's done an avera, he has released some sort of negative force in the world. A koach of tuma has been released. That koach of tuma, that negative force that's been unleashed because of his avera, so that negative force can only be removed through his execution. So the world we live in today, which is the pacifist leftist world, the Torah doesn't hold that way. There are certain times the Torah does not say don't kill. The Torah says don't murder. And there is execution that's possible. It happened rarely, and the Gemara says a Sanhedrin that killed once in 70 years is a bloodthirsty Sanhedrin. There's another opinion, 1 in 70 years, more than once in 70 years. Rabbi Kiva said I would never execute anybody. But the Torah, they certainly took them out of commission. They put them in a jail. You didn't leave them running around violent criminals so they could go beat people up. So here, this man needs to be executed because he did an avera. He unleashed the force, and the force is only countered by his execution. So I mentioned to you that sometimes in life you have to do something to figure out how to counterbalance a negative effect. The person has had sometimes maybe you see something inappropriate, so then you have to go open a Musar Seder, go open a Musar Sefer and learn Musar for 20 minutes to try to counterbalance, to kind of counteract the negative effect. I once walked into the house years ago. That my kids were little at the time, very little. The kids were little. I walked into the house. I was having a bad day, and I walked into the house, and it got worse. I don't know what happened. Somebody said something, one of the kids did something. I don't remember what happened. And I was holding a sefer in my hand. At the time I walked in, I think I was holding a Gemara. And somebody got me, and I just got really upset, and I slammed the sefer down. I threw it on the ground. And then I picked it up, and I kissed the sefer, and then I said to the guys, I really shouldn't, and my kids were just looking at me like this. And I said, guys, I really shouldn't have done that. And we're talking about probably 20 years ago. The guys, I really shouldn't have done that. But then I felt it's not good enough. That's not good enough because the kids saw me do it. And I have to figure out something now to God, I really crossed the line. And I have to figure out something to do to counteract that. So there's something called a Taanis Dibbur. Have you ever heard of the concept of a Taanis Dibbur? It's called a verbal fast. That means it's not a food fast. It's a verbal fast. That means a person takes on himself that you will not speak the entire day other than Torah and tefillah. No talking, no mundane talking. And I felt that the novelty of it, I hadn't known it, my kids have never heard of it. And then I felt that the novelty of it and seeing me do it and implement it will be the counterbalance. And not only that, I even wrote on a piece of paper Taanis Dibbur, and I kept it in my pocket. So every time the kids came up to me to talk to me, I just flashed the Taanis Dibbur that I can't talk right now. My wife was fine with it, and she gets to talk and I don't talk at all, so she had no problem. But my kids, I had to flash them that it's a Taanis Dibbur. And they were even coming up to me themselves and say, oh, Daddy, oh no, we can't talk now because it's a Taanis Dibbur. And so I felt I had to do something to counter the effect. There's something, a Rav Schein, by the way, there are Gedolim who make a Taanis Dibbur from the month of Elul until after Yom Kippur. 40 days of Taanis Dibbur. Rav Scheinberg Zatzal used to make a Taanis Dibbur every Shabbos. Every single Shabbos he made a Taanis Dibbur. He only talked Torah and Tefillah. And then when one of his disciples came to him to ask about making a Taanis Dibbur, that you got to be on the right level to do that. Rav Scheinberg, that wasn't the only thing he did. It's besides knowing Shas and Poskim. They didn't start with the Taanis Dibbur. But Rav Scheinberg's wife said to the Talmud that her husband had been making a Taanis Dibbur for 3 years, every Shabbos. For 3 years he'd been doing the Taanis Dibbur before she even knew he was doing a Taanis Dibbur. How do you like that? How do you like that? That's already impressive. They're not broadcasting it to the world. And he's just, sitting in Shabbos, says it Dvar Torah. If his wife says something, he probably went, he laughed and he listened to her until she chapped that he was doing a Taanis Dibbur. It took about 3 years till she chapped the Taanis Dibbur. That's really impressive. All right, and she wasn't, it's not like she did all the talking, it's not like the guy comes to court. The guy says he wants to get rid of his wife. The judge says, why? What's the problem? They go to this family court. He says, because she talks nonstop. She just talks and talks and talks. She's driving me nuts. So the judge says to him, well, what does she talk about? He says, I have no idea. She won't say. I thought it was funny. But at the end of the day, you're doing it and nobody knows about it. That's really impressive. So there's a concept, and it's very cleansing. It's very cleansing. So I felt that's what the Torah, do something to counterbalance. And therefore, they have to execute the guy to counterbalance the negative effect on them. Okay, let's go on. Take a look at Pasuk Ches. A new concept. Ki yipolei mimcha davar lamishpat, when something is beyond you, and we're talking to judges over here, bein dam ledam, a legal decision affecting blood. Sometimes you don't know if certain blood that a woman experiences, sometimes it makes her tameh, and if it's after birth that she may not become tameh. They're very technical halachas here. Bein din ledin, one law or another law. Uve nega lenega, different type of afflictions, what do you call it, from tsaras. Divrei rivos bisharecha, various forms of contention. So what do you do? Vekamta ve'alisa el hamakom asher yivchar Hashem elokecha bo. So you go up to the Beis Hamikdash where the Sanhedrin was, and you go up to ask them. So there are two life lessons here. Number one, the Mefarshim take this in a completely out of context. And I think that this is something we wonder about. How come we've been suffering for so long? How come the Jewish people have been suffering for so long? And it doesn't seem to get any better. The Wall Street Journal just came out with they just excoriated Biden and his administration because what happened? Hamas shot 6 people, so they blamed Netanyahu. They blamed, even that we're blamed for? Cold-blooded murder, that we get blamed for? And there's anti-Semitism. Columbia University started again, and already they're starting up again in Columbia University. And there's a Jew got beat up in, a Jew got beat up in Antwerp, or where was Switzerland? Yeah, everywhere you go, and we've been suffering for a lot worse than that for 2,000 years. Why are we suffering? So one of the Hasidic masters, he says like this, Ki yipolei mimcha davar, when you're wondering about, read the pasuk inside now, completely out of context, but it's a fascinating shot. Ki yipolei mimcha davar, how does he translate about it? It's hidden from you. La mishpat, when the judgment is hidden from you. Which judgment? Bein dam ledam, why is so much Jewish blood spilled? And we're wondering about that. Bein din ledin, why are there so many strict judgments against the Jewish people? Uve nega lenega, various afflictions on the Jewish people. When we're wondering about why are we going through so much suffering? And we do wonder. We have faith in God, He knows what He's doing, but we wonder. The answer is, divrei rivos bisharecha, because there's internal fighting among the Jews. That's why. That's the answer to the question. You know why we've been, and that we learned on Tisha B'Av from the time the second Beis Hamikdash was destroyed because of Sinas Chinam. And so the Torah alludes to that over here, that when you're wondering why we're still suffering, why we are going through so much suffering, it's because of the internal fighting among Klal Yisrael, among the Jewish people. Now, contrary to popular belief, the internal fighting is not because there's, the Litvaks and the Hasidim are fighting. That's not why. The internal fighting means those who are anti the Torah camp, fighting with the Torah camp. That's the main fighting. The main fighting that it's talking about is the Jews who are fighting with the Torah faithful. Doesn't mean that we're perfect either, and we do have our own areas that we have to improve. And areas could be within your family, by the way. Family is also, they're also people. They're also people. What do you call it? Family, in-laws, neighbors, people in the shul. They're also considered people. I want to ask you a question. Can I ask you guys a question? I want to ask you a question. Do you love the Jewish people, Shai? Do you love the? Aren't Jews great?
Trying to love them.
Trying to love them. I mean, in general, Jews are great, right? Hey, yeah, a lot of chesed, tzedakah, Shabbos family, Shabbos hosting. Aren't Jews great? Don't you love the Jewish people? You got to love the Jewish people, right? Don't you love the Jewish people? What about your brother-in-law? What about your upstairs neighbor? What about that guy in Shul who keeps shaking he shakes the whole bench while you're trying to daven? What about the guy who nailed you in the back of the head with his stender? You love him too? You love them too? It's an interesting thing. I love the Jewish people. I have trouble with him. And this guy gets on my nerves. And hey guy, if he would move, it wouldn't be so bad. But I love the Jewish people. That tells you something. Loving the Jewish people means loving the guy who's next to you, not the idea of the Jewish people. It's not easy. I once went to Shul. I'll tell you something. I once went to Shul. I came home from Shul one morning, and I walked into the house, and my wife says to me, "You look tense." I say, "I don't look tense. I am tense." She said, "Why?" I said, "I just spent an hour in Shul. You know what that takes out of you? The chazan davens too fast, the other chazan daven too slow. One guy wanted the window open, the other guy wouldn't turn on the air conditioning. The kid behind me was making noise. The guy next to me was davening too loud. The kid behind me knocked me in the back of the head with the shtender. Then we did the hakafas. He poked me with his lulav. And I haven't eaten breakfast yet." So I say tongue-in-cheek, even though it's not so tongue-in-cheek. Shul, davening is an afterthought when I go to Shul. The main work in Shul, it's a midos workshop. I'm in Shul to work on my midos. I happen to daven also. Guy whipped me with his talus the other day. He's putting on his talus, and nailed me, and he got nice thick strings. So this guy nailed me. I once got hit in the eye with a talus. I haven't even started davening yet. Then the chazan's too fast. This guy's shaking. We're sitting on one bench, and one guy's shaking. He's in motion before he even opened his sitter. The other day I had to calm this kid down. Kid sits next to me. I was in Shul. Kid came late. He sat down. Like in football, they have in American football, they have a play. There's a man in motion. There's a man in motion. This kid sits down and starts shaking. All I did was put my hand out and a stop sign. Relax. Then you got another guy who's, he's crowding you with the air conditioning and windows and air conditioning and all this stuff. I got a guy upset the other day. I wasn't trying to get him upset, maybe a little, but I was sitting in the Shul learning, and the air conditioning was on, and this guy walks over, and he takes, there's the control, the thing, and he just walks right over to the air conditioning, and he starts, I said, there are people, including myself, he says, "No, I'm just making it less noisy." Less noisy means it's not going to be as cool. So I didn't say anything, because my policy is when people, I say, "It's not my shul, you're free to do you're free to do whatever," and I won't fight. Years ago I don't fight about it anymore. But then after, and I was a little irritated. It was the second time he had done it in that week. So, if he would have just come over as I was sitting there and said, "Do you mind if I turn, just a little decent?" So he just walked past like none of us exist, and he starts adjusting it. He just walked into the shul, he's already adjusting it. So I didn't say anything, and then afterwards he comes over to me. He says, "Listen, I just want to," he said, he starts to explain. I didn't say that. I said, "Listen, you got to do what's good for you." Ooh, did that get him upset? I said, "You got to do what's good for you. You don't have to think about what the tzibur needs. You just do what's good for you." "No, I'm not doing what's good for me." "Really? You're doing what's good for me?" Certainly didn't seem like you're doing what's good for you. Certainly seemed like you're doing what's good for you. So you live it. It's like, the shul is a midos workshop. There's always guys in shul who winter, they open up the window, and they sit by the window and open up the window, forgetting that the ice cold air doesn't stop right at their seat. He says, "I need fresh air." Yeah, but what about the rest of us? You need fresh air. The rest of us got to freeze. So there's always this issue. That's divrei rivos v'sharecha, and that's what's keeping us in the situation that we're in. Number one. Then at the end of the pasuk it says, "V'kamta ve'alisa el hamakom asher yivchar Hashem Elokecha." You should go up to the place that Hashem your God has chosen. Now, who are we talking about over here? We're talking about a Beis Din. And a Beis Din that doesn't necessarily know. So the halacha is, if a Beis Din doesn't know the halacha, you go in here, every city had a Beis Din that we learned earlier. If the Beis Din doesn't know the halacha, what do? They go up to Eretz, they go up to Yerushalayim. And there were 3 Beis Dins at the Har HaBayis. There were 3 Beis Dins on the temple. One at the beginning of the Temple Mount, one a little closer in, and then there was the Sanhedrin of 71 in the Lishkas HaGozis, what's called the chamber of hewn marble or hewn stone. So who's going up to ask them? These are qualified judges who are experts, but something came up which they're not sure about. They got to go up to Yerushalayim. So I saw one of the first saying most men especially have trouble asking questions. I know men have trouble for some reason before. Okay, you guys were born into ways, and what was it before ways? What was it called? No. What was it? Huh? No, what was it? Before Waze came around, there was the other. There was a different thing that you push buttons and found where you were going. Lived in an era where people used maps. Yeah, use map. Now I never had a problem. What's that?
We use Google Maps also.
Google Maps, yeah. Oh, Baruch Hashem, we got Google Maps too. Yeah. When I say a map, you call it Google Map. Yeah. So in those days we used to read. Yeah. I never had a problem driving. If I didn't know where I was going, I stopped the first person I see and ask directions. Many men especially, stereotypically, men don't like asking directions. Men insist on trying to find it themselves. And for some reason, a person feels if I got to ask, it reduces me somehow. Says the Torah, no it doesn't. V'kamta ve'olisa el hamakom asher yivchar Hashem lokecha. This is an aliyah for you. This is a way you rise, you elevate yourself. By willing to ask, you elevate yourself. That shows that you're still looking to learn. That shows you're willing to, I don't have to know. I don't know everything, and I don't know half everything, and I don't know anybody who does know everything. Except maybe Rabbi Bradowitz, right? But other than that, I don't know anybody who knows everything. So you don't know, so you ask. What's the problem? You don't know, so ask. V'kamta ve'olisa, it's a way of, you elevate yourself. It's not you shouldn't be insulted. Shouldn't be self-conscious about it. I don't know. What do you want from me? I don't know, so I ask. That's what the Torah is getting at. Okay, now let's go on. There are a couple other points I want to get to today. Go down to pasuk Yud Aleph. Okay, this is the what do you call it? 2 lines from the bottom, and there's a very, very enchanting idea here. Al pi ha-Torah asher yorucha, according to the Torah that they instruct you, ve'al ha-mishpat asher yomru lecha, and the judgment that they tell you, ta'aseh, you should do. Lo sosur min hadover asher yagidu lecha yamin usmal. Don't veer off of what they tell you, neither right nor left. Now take a look at Rashi. It's on page 1028, top Rashi, right column. Yaminu small. What does that mean? Don't veer off of what the Gedolim tell you. Don't veer off to the right or to the left. Says Rashi, Yaminu small. Afilu omer lecha al yamin shu small. Even if he tells you right is left, ve'al small shehu yamin, and left is right, ve'kol shekain, and certainly if he tells you al yamin ve'al small. So Rashi, go ahead. If they tell you that right is left and left is right, obey them. What does that mean? I mean, I know my right. This is my right and this is my left. I know right and left. He tells me that's your left hand. No, it's not. It's my right hand. So what does it mean even if he tells you right is left and left is right? What does that mean? Anybody? What does that mean? Even if they tell you right is left is right?
Something seems very strange.
Correct. That means it's symbolically. If he tells you right, I thought it was the other way, and he tells you something completely different. Why is that? Because they've got a vision that we don't have. The greatness of the Gedolim, they see a much bigger picture than we have. The analogy they always use is the guy who's at the top of the watchtower and the guy's at the bottom of the watchtower. And the guy at the top of the watchtower, he can see far out into the distance. Whereas the guy at the bottom, he says, well, everything seems to be okay. And the guy at the top of the watchtower says, the enemy is attacking. I don't see any enemy over here. Everything looks fine. Because he can see out over the horizon. That's the plain meaning over here. That we have to have faith in the Torah scholars. They see everything. They know what we know, but they know a lot more than what we know. And it doesn't always make sense to us, and often you find out it only makes sense down the line. I want to tell you something. Rav Shach Zatzal, who was the Gadol Ador, so when in 1977, Menachem Begin became the prime minister. It was the first time that the left got thrown out. Menachem Begin became the prime minister of Israel. And they appealed to Menachem Begin, the yeshiva world appealed to Menachem Begin was far more traditional. He grew up from, and then he left it during the war, and eventually he came here. He was very, very traditional. He was by far the best of a bad lot. And he himself made Kiddush Friday night. He was a very traditional Jew. He wasn't a halacha observer, but he went to the White House, insisted on kosher food and putting on a yarmulke. When he went to the White House, then the others did. He insisted on kosher food. He insisted on putting on a yarmulke for whatever that's worth. It still shows you that a Jew's a Jew. And he lived very modestly. He was not he wasn't immoral, and he wasn't into money. He wasn't into bribes. He lived in a small apartment. He wasn't following the Torah guidance, but he was an idealist. He was very much an idealist. It's just that some of his ideals were not exactly in perfect consistency with Torah, perfectly consistent with Torah. But the point is, when he became the prime minister, so the yeshiva, there's funding from the government. So they appealed to him to have, I think at the time, 50% of the funding for the yeshivas. And Menachem said, why 50%? I'm going to give you 100%. He wanted to give 100% of the funding. Rav Shach Zatzal was Rosh Yeshiva Panovich. Rav Shach said, no, we can't accept it. No, not more than 50%. They said to Rav Shach, why? He's giving us the money. Rav Shach said, because if we accept 100% funding from him, then one day the government's going to change, and if they cut the funding, then the people who normally fundraise for the yeshiva will be out of practice. They're not going to and therefore we can't be in that situation. We have to continue having fundraisers because we don't know what's going to happen down the line. It could just easily change. What just happened now? And this is Rav Shach said this in 1977, that the far-reaching vision of everybody else is probably the only person who didn't say, yeah, grab the money, 100%, yeah, look at that. And Rav Shach said, no, we're not going to do that because we don't know what's going to be down the line. And what did they do? So now they cut the funding. And they cut the funding when it certainly wasn't 100%. And that's the far-reaching vision of the Gedolim. That's what it's telling you. And that's al yamin shu small. I guarantee you there were people back then who, when Rav Shach said, they said, that's madness. They're giving us the money. What Jew doesn't take money when you give him money? That's madness. For the yeshivas, millions of dollars. No, not going to do that. And we see the wisdom, in hindsight, you see the wisdom. Now, I saw a phenomenal pshat here. And the pshat is, there are always people in every shul and in every community, whatever the rabbi says, they're going to be against the rabbi. They're always going to be opposed. It doesn't matter what he says. If I'm facing you, then yamin is small. If you say right, that's my left. When is it yamin small and small? When is right left and left is right? That's only when you're opposed to the rabbi. If you would stand behind him and follow him, then right is right and left is left. That's what Torah is getting at. It's so true. Just be willing to follow. You don't have to be, don't be such an Ibr Chacham. And in every community, there's always somebody who's got it in for the rabbi. I heard once an American rabbi, a rabbi of a shul, he once said, 90% of the people in the shul are apathetic. They just don't care about anything. 5% of the people love the rabbi, and 5% of the people hate the rabbi. It's always like that. Whatever the rabbi says is no good. I know one Rav, a very big Rav, so he was the Rav of a shul, and he said there was a guy in the shul who he could tell really had it in for him. Guy really. So he didn't know what it was. He couldn't figure out what it was. He'd say good Shabbos to the guy wouldn't answer the guy. He couldn't figure out what was bothering the guy. He waited until Yom Kippur. The Rav waited on Yom Kippur right before Ne'ilah, the last prayer of the Yom Kippur. And he walks over to the guy and he says to the guy, listen, I feel that maybe I've wronged you in some way. Is there something that I've done to you? Please tell me what I've done to you, because I know that there's a certain resentment here. The guy says, Rabbi, I hate your guts. He says, why? What did I do to you? He says, Rabbi, every time you get up to speak in the shul, I feel guilty. The Rav said that he knew he was doing his job right. If that's why you resent me, then I'm obviously on the right track. And he's not one of these fire and brimstones Rabbanim who tells people are going to go to Gehenna. He's very sweet. And he said at that point he realized he's doing his job correctly. But you always have those. You always have those people. Now turn back for a second. Where's the first time we find this? Turn all the way back to Bereshis. Turn all the way back to Bereshis. In Parshas Vayechi. Page 270. Sorry, 272. 2 lines from the top. Watch this. 272, 2 lines from the top. So this is where Yosef is bringing his sons to get a bracha from Yaakov Avinu, from Ephraim and Menashe. Look what happens. Vayikach Yosef es shneim es Ephraim bimino mismolo Yisrael. Yosef takes Ephraim in his own right hand to the left of Yisrael. 272, second line from the top. Ves Menashe bismolo mimin Yisrael. He takes Menashe in his left hand to the right of Yaakov Avinu. Vayage Shelov. So what happens? Vayishlach Yisrael Yemino Vayoshas Arosh Ephraim. V'hu Atzoyer. Yaakov stretches his right hand onto Ephraim. V'smola Arosh Menashe. Sikel es Yodov ki Menashe HaBechor. So Yaakov crosses his hands. Right is right or right is left. Here we go. There's going to be an argument about which one is right and which one is left. Okay, skip down to Pasuk Yud Zayin. Pasuk Yud Zayin, last word on the line. 8 lines from the bottom. Vayar Yosef ki yoshis oviv yad yamina al rosh Ephraim. He saw the right hand on Ephraim's head. Vayera be'enov. It wasn't good. Yosef was not happy. Vayismoch yad oviv l'oser osom al rosh Ephraim rosh Ephraim. So he tries to take his hand off and put it on the head of Menashe. Vayomer al Yosef al aviv lo chein avi. No, daddy. Ki zeh bechor sim yamincha al rosho. Put your right hand on his head. He's the bechor. Vayemoin avi vayomer. Yadati bedi yadati. I know, my son. I know exactly what I'm doing. There's an argument here. Yosef says, no, right is left, left is right. What does Yaakov say to Yosef? He says, I know what I'm doing. What is he saying when he says, I know what I'm doing? You see what's happening right now. But I see what's going to happen down in the future. Yadati b'ni yadati. I've got more insight than you do over here. That's the real mark of the Gedolei Yisrael, is their ability to foresee. And it says in Pirkei Avos, Ezehu chacham haroeh es hanolad. A wise man is one who sees what's going to happen. To see what's in front of you don't have to be a wise man. You don't have to be a wise man to see what's going on in front of you right now. To be a wise man, you got to see what are the ramifications? What's going to happen over here? And by the way, this is one of the most common mistakes people make when they've got ideas, particularly communal ideas. People say, you know what, they ought to do this in the shul, they ought to do that in the shul, they ought to do this in the government, they ought to do that in the government. That's very short-sighted because people never take into account, good, you've come up with a solution for this problem, but what new problems is that going to create? What new problems is that going to create? You know, they ought to, I always wondered why on airplanes they load up the people in a certain order on the plane. It's more logical to do it a different way. Yeah, but what problems is that going to create? What problems is that going to create? And so on and so forth. They always have the people in front. I always thought, get the back loaded up first and work your way from the back forward. But from the airlines, so what'll that do? It'll save the airlines time, right? Let's say you're the head of the airlines. See, your idea is, well, do it that way. It's going to save time. We can take off sooner. Yeah, but it's going to cost us money because the people who buy the better tickets, they want to get on first. So what? You're solving one problem by creating another problem. You know where the classic example in Judaism is? Where's the classic example today in the Torah world? You know where the classic example is? Women whose husbands refuse to give them a get. What they call the recalcitrant husbands. So you have women whose husbands, the Beis Din paskin, he should give her a get, and he refuses to give a get. We do not have the option of applying corporal punishment nowadays, which the old Beis Din did. In the old Beis Din, if a guy refused to give a get, in the old days, if a guy refused to give a get, so they had a physical therapy session, and they took care of all the resistance, and then he gave the get was forthcoming. So what are the people who know they know everything, they got all the solutions. What should we do? You should have a halachic prenuptial agreement, where if the Beis Din paskins that he should give a get, and he doesn't give a get, so retroactively it was never a marriage to begin with. You make a built-in condition, like we learned last month in Gittin. You have a built-in condition. That would solve the problem. And from a raw halachic point of view, it works. So why not? Why not? You know what the answer is? What's the answer? The answer is sure. You'll solve one problem. You'll solve the problem of recalcitrant husbands. So let's say, how many recalcitrant husbands are there in Klal Yisrael right now? Let's say 1,000. I'm just throwing out a number. Let's say there are 1,000 men today who won't give their wives gets. So you solve that problem, right, for 1,000 women. And then what happens? You create a new problem for hundreds of thousands of women. Why? Because every marriage now has no solid foundation going into the marriage. Because everybody knows, yeah, we could dissolve the marriage like that. So you create a new problem. So you're out of the frying pan into a bigger frying pan. And that's what the Torah tells us. I'll tell you a beautiful story. The Brisker Rav, who was known for his incredible foresight. So the Brisker Rav is ready to go to sleep. And he says to his sons were already older, they were living in the house, and he says to them, listen, I'm going to go to sleep. It's about 11:30 at night. Probably within the next hour, you're going to hear a soft knock at the door. When you hear the soft knock at the door, I want you to run to the door and make sure to open it and call me. So they know what he's talking about. So sure enough, the Brisker Rav gets ready to go to sleep. He gets into bed, and a half hour later, there's a soft knock at the door. So his son runs over and he opens the door, and there was a Rav standing there at the door. So my father said to wait here. The Brisker Rav was a gadol hador. So my father said to wait, and the Brisker Rav came out, and he exchanged a few sharp words with this Rav, and the Rav went scampering off. So his son said to him, what happened? So Brisker Rav said, look, there was a meeting tonight of Rabbanim, and they had to make a decision on a certain issue. And they knew that I'm opposed to it, but they didn't want to accept my opinion. So I knew, but I also knew that they weren't going to reach this decision. They weren't willing to make the decision without consulting me. So I knew what they're going to do is they're going to decide not like I feel. They're going to decide against what my opinion. And then they're going to say, well, somebody came to the house to ask you, but nobody answered the door. So I figured there's going to be a knock on the door, and they'll knock softly so they won't be lying. They'll say we knocked on the door, but no. So I knew that knock was coming. And then he waited. Sure enough, there was the knock. And there was a Brisker Rav, and he told the guys, I'm against it. They reversed the decision. That's the foresight. That they see, you can tell what's going to be happening before it even happens. Okay, one more point. Take a look at Pasuk Yud Daled. Ki savoy la'aretz asher Hashem lokecha nosein lecha l'rishta v'yashavta ba v'amarta asima lai melech kechol hagoyim asher tzivosai. I think you're going to come to the land, you're going to want to have a king. You want to have a Jewish king. So, first of all, gentlemen, where does the king live? In a palace. How do you say palace in Hebrew? Armon is modern Hebrew. A heichal. Heichal. Take a look in the pasuk. Take a look in this pasuk that talks about a king, and pick it up. Take a look in pasuk Yud Daled, starting with the word asima. Asima alai melech. You see that? Okay. The last word of the word asima, the last letter of the word asima. You see where it is? 6 lines from the top. The last letter of the word asima is a hey. The last word of the word alai is a yud. The last word of melech is a chaf. Chaf safis, but it's a chaf. And the last letter of kechol is a lamed, which spells what? Heichal. In the pasuk talking about a king, you have a sequence of the letters heichal, which is the only place in the Torah that it appears in sequence, except for one other place. Take a look in Bereshis. Go back to Bereshis. You're not going to believe this. Take a look at Bereshis, Perek Mem Aleph, pasuk Nun Aleph. Mem Aleph Nun Aleph in Bereshis, the book of Bereshis. It's page 230. And this is talking about Yosef, who's the ruler of Egypt now. And if you take a look, where is it? Oh, maybe I got the wrong pasuk over here. Maybe it's Chaf. Is it Chaf Aleph? Oh. Yeah, sorry, I'm in the wrong pasuk. Page 228. Page 228, 6 lines from the top. This is where Yosef interprets the dream. Vayomer Paro el Yosef. Everybody see that? 6 lines from the top. Re'ei nasati oscha kol eretz Mitzrayim. Look, I've put you in charge of all of Egypt. What's he just done? He's appointed him as the ruler, right? Take a look. The word re'ei, right after re'ei. The last letter of the word re'ei, hey, nasati is a yud, oscha is a chaf, lamed is lav, heichal. Those are the only 2 places in the Torah where it appears, both where it is in that sequence, both when somebody has been appointed a king. So in case anybody's wondering about coincidences, about whether there was some foresight over here, right? There you have the word heichal, which is a palace, which appears both times. The only 2 times it appears in sequence at the end of a letter is where somebody's appointed a king. Okay, we'll have to wait next time. We'll talk about the king a little bit, what a Jewish king is.